The massive doors of the Galaxy Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the enormous hall. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked forward with steady steps, his black suit looking simple and plain among the colorful robes and strange armor worn by the alien delegates around him. His face showed no fear as he moved toward the center of the room, where 47 different species waited to hear humanity's final answer. The chamber itself was a wonder that had taken 300 years to build. Its walls stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadows, and floating platforms held representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Some delegates looked like giant insects with clicking mandibles, others resembled walking trees with glowing bark, and still others were beings of pure energy contained in crystal shells. They all had one thing in common, though. They all believed humans were about to surrender. Jake stopped at the speaking platform and looked up at the High Chancellor, a creature called Zeekdach from the Vorthic Empire. The Chancellor's body was covered in thick gray scales, and 4 arms ending in sharp claws gripped the edges of his golden throne. His 3 eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, focused on the human with what Jake assumed was supposed to be intimidation. "Human Morrison," the Chancellor's voice boomed through translation devices that turned his alien speech into English. "Your species has been given generous terms. You will remain in your home system of Sol and cease all expansion into galaxy space. Your colonial fleets will be surrendered to Council authority for proper disposal. Your military forces will be disbanded except for basic system defense. In return, the Council grants your species the right to continue existing." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the constant humming of the station's life support system seemed to pause. Representatives who had witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations leaned forward in their seats to hear humanity's response. They had all studied the reports about human military capabilities during the recent Outer Rim conflicts. Humans fought with a viciousness that disturbed many species, and they seemed to prefer dying rather than retreating when cornered. Jake Morrison looked around the chamber slowly, his brown eyes taking in every alien face and form. Some delegates shifted nervously under his gaze, though they told themselves it was ridiculous to feel threatened by a single human. After a long moment, Jake began to laugh. It started as a quiet chuckle, but grew louder until it echoed off the chamber walls like thunder. The sound made several insect-like representatives click their mandibles in distress. The tree-like Sylvani rustled their branches in confusion. The energy beings pulsed with colors that indicated alarm in their species. Humans were supposed to be diplomatic, reasonable creatures who valued survival above all else. This laughter suggested something far more dangerous. "You want to know what humanity chooses?" Jake asked, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space without any need for amplification. "You want to know our answer to your generous offer?" He turned to face the assembled council directly, and his expression changed from amusement to something cold and hard as steel. "We choose war, not just any war, total war, complete war. War until every council fleet is burning debris floating in space." The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Delegates began shouting in dozens of languages while translation devices struggled to keep up. The Trilexian representative, a being that looked like a giant jellyfish floating in a tank of blue liquid, pulsed with rapid color changes that indicated extreme distress. The rock-like Granite Federation delegates began making deep rumbling sounds that their species used to express disbelief. High Chancellor Zeke raised all 4 of his arms for silence, his claws scraping against his throne. "You cannot be serious. Human, your species numbers less than 50 billion across 12 systems. The Council represents over 6 trillion beings across 400 systems. You have perhaps 100 ships capable of deep space combat. We command fleets of 10,000 vessels." Jake Morrison's smile was the kind that made experienced soldiers nervous. "Your numbers are correct, Chancellor. Your conclusion is wrong." From the observation deck overlooking the main chamber, Admiral Lisa Hayes watched the scene unfold with grim satisfaction. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force, and her graying hair was pulled back in a tight bun that emphasized her sharp features. Her fingers moved across a holographic display that showed tactical information invisible to the council delegates below. Lisa had been preparing for this moment for 30 years. Ever since she was a young lieutenant who had read the classified reports about first contact with the Galaxy Council. Even then, it had been clear that this day would come. The Council's entire philosophy was based on the idea that all species would eventually submit to their authority for the greater good of galactic peace. They simply could not accept that any species might choose destruction over submission. The alarms began quietly at first, just soft chimes that indicated incoming ships. Then they grew louder as the station's sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from multiple directions. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the chamber as the Council's own defense systems registered what was happening. Admiral Hayes, her communications officer reported through her earpiece. All human vessels report ready. Operation Thunderbolt is go on your command. Lisa nodded and activated her command circuit. All units, this is Admiral Hayes. Execute Thunderbolt. Show them what humans really are. Far below in the chamber, Jake? Morrison was still speaking as chaos erupted around him. You see, Chancellor, you made a fundamental error in your calculations. You assume that the ships and stations you've observed over the past 50 years represent the full extent of human military capability. You assume that our diplomatic missions were just diplomatic missions. You assume that our mining operations were just mining operations. The lights in the chamber flickered as massive explosions lit up the space around Centauri Prime. Through the transparent aluminum windows, delegates could see the Council's enforcement fleet that had been hidden behind. The station's moon suddenly erupting in balls of fire. Ships that had been invisible to their sensors moments before were now visible as they poured devastating firepower into Council vessels. You assumed, Jake continued, his voice somehow remaining calm despite the battle raging outside, that humans value peace above principle, that we value survival above freedom, that we would choose slavery over death. A Centauri aide rushed up to the Chancellor's throne and whispered urgently in his ear. The Chancellor's 3 eyes widened as he received the report of his fleet's destruction. 12 Council ships destroyed in the first 5 minutes of fighting. No human losses reported. Jake Morrison began walking toward the exit as Council security forces rushed into the chamber. They were too late, though. The human ships that had escorted him to this meeting were already moving to extract him. You wanted to know humanity's choice, Chancellor. Now you know. We choose war, total war, and we're very, very good at it. The last thing the Council delegates heard before the lights went out was Jake Morrison's final words echoing through their universal translators. See you in hell? Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES, defiant as the massive warship dropped out of hyperspace above the Council stronghold at Kepler Station. The ship's hull gleamed with fresh armor plating that had been installed just weeks before, and its weapon systems hummed with barely contained energy. Ben had been waiting for this moment for 15 years, ever since he graduated from the Naval Academy with dreams of exploring peaceful space. Those dreams had died the day he learned what the Galaxy Council really wanted from humanity. Captain, we have multiple Council ships moving to intercept, reported Commander Amy Walsh from her position at the tactical station. Her fingers danced across holographic displays showing enemy positions throughout the system. Looks like 3 heavy cruisers and 8 escort frigates. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. Ben almost laughed at that. The Council still thought this was some kind of negotiation that could be ended with the right words. They had no idea that humanity had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. Every human ship in space had been designed with one primary purpose: winning a war against superior numbers through superior firepower and tactics. Open fire the moment we're in range, Ben ordered. Target their command ship first. Show them what our new plasma cannons can do. The Defiant shuddered as its main guns opened fire. Beams of superheated plasma lanced across space and struck the lead Council cruiser dead center. The alien ship's shields flared bright blue for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing completely. The plasma beams punched through the hull like it was made of paper, and secondary explosions began tearing the massive vessel apart from the inside. "Enemy flagship is breaking up," Amy reported with satisfaction in her voice. "Their shields couldn't handle our weapons at all. The other ships are scattering." Ben nodded grimly as he watched debris from the Council ship drift past their view screen. The alien vessel had been twice the size of the Defiant. But size meant nothing when your enemy had better technology and the will to use it, the Galaxy. Council had grown soft during their centuries of enforced peace, building ships designed for intimidation rather than actual combat. They were about to learn the difference. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out as the full scope of humanity's response became clear. On the colony world of New Boston, what had appeared to be a simple evacuation convoy suddenly revealed its true nature. The civilian transport ships opened hidden weapon bays and began deploying orbital defense platforms that had been disguised as cargo containers. Within hours, the entire system was surrounded by enough firepower to stop a full battle fleet. Colonel Susan Carter watched the transformation from the command center buried deep beneath New Boston's capital city. The underground facility had been built during the colony's first year, officially as protection against meteor strikes and solar storms. In reality, it was a military command bunker that could coordinate the defense of 3-star systems simultaneously. "All defensive positions report ready," her aide announced. "The orbital platforms are online and targeting any Council ship that enters the system. Ground-based missile batteries have clear firing solutions on all approach vectors." Susan smiled as she remembered the Council inspection team that had visited New Boston just 2 years ago. They had been shown farms and factories, schools and shopping centers. They had seen exactly what humanity wanted them to see, a peaceful agricultural colony with no military value. The inspectors had never suspected that every barn contained hidden weapons. Every factory could switch to munitions production in hours, and every colonist had completed advanced combat training. "Send a message to all Council forces in the area," Susan ordered. "Tell them that New Boston is under human protection and any attempt to approach will be considered an act of war. Then remind them that we already chose war." On Earth itself, President Karen Williams stood in the Oval Office delivering humanity's declaration to the Galaxy. Camera crews from every major news network were present as she spoke words that would reshape galactic politics forever. Her voice was calm and steady, but her eyes held the kind of determination that had carried humanity from a single world to an interstellar civilization. "The Galaxy Council has demanded our surrender," she said, looking directly into the cameras. "They have ordered us to abandon our colonies, disarm our fleets, and accept their authority over human space. They believe that their superior numbers and longer history give them the right to dictate terms to our species." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "They are wrong. Humanity has never bowed to threats, and we will not start now. If the Council wants war, they will have it. But they should understand what they are asking for." President Williams activated a holographic display that showed human space in 3 dimensions. Red dots marked every human colony and installation, while blue dots showed known Council positions. As she spoke, new red dots began appearing throughout the display as hidden human facilities revealed themselves for the first time. "For 50 years, every human expansion into space has been planned with this day in mind," she explained. Every colony ship carried defensive systems. Every mining operation included weapon manufacturing capability. Every research station monitored Council communications and military movements. "We have been preparing for this war since the day we first left our solar system." The holographic display zoomed in to show individual star systems where human settlements were transforming before the Galaxy's eyes. Space stations that had appeared to be simple trading posts were deploying massive weapon arrays. Asteroid mining facilities were revealing themselves as heavily fortified military bases. Even the passenger ships that carried tourists between human worlds were shedding their civilian disguises to show their true nature as fast attack vessels in the depths of the Pentagon. General Marcus Thompson supervised the activation of Operation Prometheus, humanity's ultimate contingency plan. Banks of quantum computers came online, coordinating the movements of thousands of ships and millions of personnel across dozens of star systems. Manufacturing centers that had been producing consumer goods for decades switched to wartime production in a matter of hours. "All colonial governments report ready," his aide announced. "Military production is at maximum capacity. The reserve fleets are moving to their assigned positions." Marcus nodded as he studied the tactical displays surrounding his command chair. The Council had made their ultimatum, believing they were dealing with a typical spacefaring species that would value survival over independence. They had no idea they were facing a civilization that had spent its entire existence preparing for exactly this kind of threat. "Send word to all human commanders," Marcus ordered. The Galaxy Council wanted to know what humanity chooses. Now, they know we choose total war and we're going to win it. Throughout human space, the message was received and understood. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for pretending to be peaceful explorers was over. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans really were, the most dangerous predators ever to leave their home planet. The emergency session of the Galaxy Council convened in what had once been their most secure facility, deep within the crystal caves of Zentari Prime. High Chancellor Zeke H. looked around the makeshift assembly hall with growing desperation as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The magnificent chamber where they had issued their ultimatum to humanity lay in ruins above them, destroyed in the first wave of human attacks just 72 hours ago. 17 enforcement fleets completely destroyed, reported Admiral Kextel of the Altarian Defense Force, his melodious voice cracking with strain. "The humans didn't just defeat our ships, they obliterated them so completely that we can barely find debris. Our crews never even had time to send distress signals." The assembled delegates listened in stunned silence as the reports continued. The Vorthic Empire had lost their entire border patrol fleet in less than 30 minutes. The Trilaxian Federation's massive fortress station at Omega Point had been reduced to scrap metal by weapons they couldn't even identify. The crystal cities of the Zentari homeworld were burning from orbital bombardment that seemed to come from nowhere. "How is this possible?" demanded the representative from the Corvani Republic, her forearms gesturing wildly in distress. "Our intelligence reports indicated the humans possessed perhaps 50 warships capable of deep space operations. Where are these fleets coming from?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every species in the Council had their own intelligence networks, their own methods of gathering information about potential threats. For 50 years, they had all reached the same conclusion. Humanity was a young, peaceful species with limited military capability and no real understanding of galactic politics. Dr. Elena Brooks sat quietly in the corner of the chamber, her human form looking small and fragile among the towering aliens around her. She had been the human cultural attached to the Galaxy Council for 15 years, helping to arrange trade agreements and scientific exchanges between humanity and the various Council species. Most of the delegates had barely noticed her presence. "During all those years of peaceful negotiations, because you never understood what you were looking at," Elena said softly, her voice somehow carrying clearly through the chaos of alien languages and panicked discussions. "You saw our diplomats and scientists, our merchants and explorers. You never bothered to look deeper." The chamber fell silent as every alien eye turned toward the small human woman. For the first time, many of them really looked at her instead of simply seeing another harmless representative from a minor species. What they saw in her calm expression and steady gaze made several delegates step backward involuntarily. "Every human ship you encountered during our 50 years of contact was designed with warfare in mind," Elena continued, standing up from her chair with fluid grace. "Every colony we established, every mining operation we built, every research station we placed throughout the galaxy. We've been preparing for this war since the day we first learned about the Galaxy Council." Chancellor Zeke's 3 eyes narrowed as he studied the human woman with new attention. "Impossible. Our monitoring systems would have detected large-scale Military preparations. Our inspection teams visited your colonies regularly. Elena smiled, and the expression somehow conveyed more menace than any alien threat display the delegates had ever witnessed. Your monitoring systems detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. Your inspection team saw exactly what we wanted them to see. The human military doctrine has always been simple: hope for peace, but prepare for total war. She activated. A small device from her pocket and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing real-time images from across human space. The delegates watched in growing horror as peaceful farming colonies revealed massive underground weapon factories. Simple trading stations deployed orbital defense platforms that had been hidden in their cargo bays. Mining asteroids split open to show they were actually camouflaged military bases containing enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Every civilian transport was also a troop carrier, Elena explained calmly. Every cargo ship was also a weapons platform. Every research vessel was also a spy ship gathering intelligence on your military capabilities. We've been watching you, learning from you, and preparing to destroy you for half a century. The Trilaxian representative, a massive jellyfish-like creature floating in a tank of blue liquid, pulsed with colors that indicated extreme distress in his species. But your people seem so peaceful, so interested in trade and cultural exchange. Your ambassadors spoke constantly of cooperation and mutual understanding. And we meant every word, Elena replied. Humans genuinely prefer peaceful solutions to our problems. We would have been happy to trade with you, learn from you, and explore the galaxy together as equals. But you never offered us equality, did you? From the very first contact, you made it clear that humanity would eventually need to submit to Council authority or be eliminated as a threat to galactic stability. She gestured to another holographic display that showed classified Council documents dating back to first contact with humanity. The delegates shifted uncomfortably as they saw their own secret discussions about the human problem and various plans for containing or controlling human expansion. You decided we were dangerous before you even met us, Elena continued. You were right, of course. Humans are incredibly dangerous when threatened, but you made one crucial mistake in your planning. Chancellor Zeke leaned forward in his throne, desperate to understand how his carefully laid plans had gone so wrong. What mistake? Elena's smile widened, showing her teeth in a way that made every predator instinct in the chamber scream. Warnings. You assumed that because we wanted peace, we weren't prepared for war. You assumed that because we seemed reasonable, we would be willing to surrender our freedom to maintain that peace. You assumed that humans value survival above everything else. The chamber erupted in chaos as more reports arrived. Human fleets were now attacking Council positions throughout the galaxy, moving with coordination and precision that spoke of decades of planning. Their weapons were devastating Council ships that had been considered invincible. Their tactics were brutal and effective, showing no mercy to enemies who had threatened human independence. The truth is, Elena said, her voice cutting through the noise, humans would rather burn the entire galaxy to ash than live as slaves. We chose total war because we'd rather die free than live on our knees. And now you're going to learn what that choice really means. As alarms began blaring throughout the facility and emergency lights bathed the chamber in red, Elena Brooks walked calmly toward the exit. Behind her, the Galaxy Council that had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years began to crumble as they finally understood what they were truly facing: a species that had spent their entire spacefaring history preparing for this exact moment. 6 months into the war that was supposed to last only weeks, Admiral Tony Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the Galaxy Council's most powerful fleet burn in the void around Kepler Junction. The massive space battle had raged for 3 days, and now the survivors of what had once been called the Invincible Core Defense Fleet were fleeing toward their home systems in whatever ships could still move. Final count shows 47 Council ships destroyed, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Nancy Kim. We lost 3 destroyers and took minor damage to 2 cruisers. The enemy fleet is completely broken. Tony nodded grimly as he studied the tactical displays surrounding his command chair. The Kepler Junction had been the key to the Galaxy Council's defensive strategy, a heavily fortified position that controlled access to their core worlds. Breaking through here meant that human fleets could now strike directly at the heart of Council territory, hitting the wealthy and supposedly safe systems that had never seen war before. "Send word to all human forces," Tony ordered. "Phase 2 of Operation Endgame is now in effect. Begin systematic destruction of all Council military infrastructure. Show them what happens when you threaten human colonies." The battle had been brutal, but entirely one-sided once the fighting began. Council ships that looked impressive on paper crumbled under the focused firepower of human vessels designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. The aliens had built their fleets for peacekeeping and patrol duties, with multiple species using incompatible technologies and conflicting command structures. Humans had built their ships to kill other ships as efficiently as possible throughout the galaxy. Similar scenes were playing out as humanity's true military strength revealed itself. On the industrial world of Vega 7, what the Council had believed to be a human trade station suddenly deployed enough firepower to destroy an entire invasion fleet. Hidden shipyards began producing new human vessels at a rate that terrified Council strategists. Manufacturing centers that had appeared to make civilian goods revealed their true purpose as weapons factories. Colonel Susan Carter crouched behind the rubble of what had once been New Geneva City Hall, watching Council ground forces retreat in panic from the human colonial defense. The aliens had landed expecting to find frightened civilians hiding in their homes. Instead, they found an entire population that had been trained in guerrilla warfare since childhood, fighting from prepared positions throughout the city. "Enemy forces are pulling back to their landing zone," reported Sergeant Mike Davis through her communication device. "Looks like they're trying to evacuate what's left of their ground troops." Susan smiled grimly as she watched Centauri soldiers stumbling through the streets, their advanced armor blackened and damaged from improvised explosive devices hidden throughout the city. The Council had made the same mistake on every human world they tried to invade. They assumed that human civilians would be helpless targets once separated from their military protectors. "Let them run," Susan replied. "But make sure they remember what happened here. Send a message to every Council world that this is what they can expect if they keep fighting." The truth was becoming clear across the galaxy. Humans hadn't just militarized their space fleet and colonial governments. They had militarized their entire civilization. Every human colony was a fortress. Every human civilian was a trained soldier. Every human settlement was prepared to fight to the death rather than surrender to alien occupation. Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain on Earth, General Patricia Stone watched the progress of Operation Endgame unfold across dozens of holographic displays. The massive command center hummed with activity as thousands of personnel coordinated the movements of human forces throughout the galaxy. What had started as humanity's response to the Council ultimatum was rapidly becoming something much larger and more devastating. "Council resistance is collapsing faster than our projections indicated," her chief of staff reported. "Most of their member species are requesting separate peace negotiations. The core Council worlds are completely cut off from their outer territories." Patricia nodded as she studied the strategic situation. The Galaxy Council had made their ultimatum, believing they could control both the scope and duration of any conflict with humanity. They had expected a brief war followed by human surrender and submission to Council authority. Instead, they were facing the systematic destruction of everything they had built over 1,000 years of galactic dominance. "Begin Phase 3. Patricia ordered, "Deploy the deep strike fleets. It's time to visit the Council homeworlds and deliver our final terms." Across human space, ships that had been hidden in asteroid belts and interstellar void began to move. These vessels were humanity's most closely guarded secret, ships built not for defense but for carrying the war directly to enemy territory. They were designed for one purpose: ensuring that any species that threatened human independence would never be able to threaten anyone again. The revelation of these hidden fleets sent shockwaves through what remained of the Galaxy Council's leadership. Intelligence reports spoke of massive dreadnoughts emerging from empty space, ships larger and more heavily armed than anything the Council had ever built. Human technology that had seemed merely advanced during peacetime revealed itself as devastatingly superior when applied to warfare. On the bridge of the UES Vengeance, Commander Paul Harrison reviewed the target list for the final phase of human operations. The ship was one of 12 super dreadnoughts that humanity had been building in secret for over 20 years, vessels designed to crack planetary defenses and eliminate entire civilizations if necessary. "All systems report ready, Commander," his weapons officer announced. "We have clear targeting solutions on all priority objectives in the Zentari home system." Paul looked out at the blue-green world below, home to over 8 billion Zentari. Civilians who had never imagined that their government's ultimatum to humanity would lead to this moment. The planet's orbital defense platforms had been swept away in the first hour of the attack, and now human ships surrounded the world like harbingers of judgment. "Open a channel to the surface," Paul ordered. "Let them hear humanity's final terms." As the communication link opened, Paul reflected on the irony of the situation. The Galaxy Council had sought to prevent war by forcing peace on unwilling species. Instead, they had created the bloodiest conflict in galactic history by threatening the one species willing to choose total destruction over submission. The age of the Galaxy Council was ending in fire and blood, and humanity was writing the terms of whatever would come next. The end came not with a grand battle or desperate last stand, but with a simple transmission broadcast from Earth to every inhabited world in the galaxy. President Karen Williams sat behind her desk in the Oval Office, her face calm and composed, as she delivered what everyone knew would be the final terms of a war that had reshaped galactic civilization forever. "To all member species of the former Galaxy Council," she began, her voice carrying across space to reach billions of alien beings who had once believed themselves the masters of the stars. "The war you started 18 months ago is now over. You have seen what happens when you threaten human independence. You have learned what total war really means." High Chancellor Zeek listened to the broadcast from the ruins of his palace on Zentari Prime, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been the galaxy's most powerful civilization. Through his shattered windows, he could see human ships hanging in orbit like dark angels of judgment, their weapons trained on his world and every other council stronghold throughout the galaxy. "The Galaxy Council is hereby dissolved," President Williams continued. "All member species will immediately withdraw their military forces to their home systems and cease all aggressive operations. Human colonies and territories are now recognized as sovereign space under human protection. Any violation of these terms will result in the complete sterilization of the offending species' homeworld." The threat was not empty words or diplomatic posturing. Human fleets now surrounded the home systems of every major council species, their devastating weapons proven in battle after battle throughout the long war. The technological advantages that had once made alien civilizations seem invincible, their massive space stations, their planet-spanning cities, their interconnected trade networks, had become fatal weaknesses when facing an enemy willing to destroy everything rather than accept defeat. Commander Paul Harrison stood in the observation lounge of the UES Vengeance, watching the evacuation of the last Council military installation in the Alpha Centauri sector. The war had lasted 18 months that felt like 18 years, leaving entire star systems in ruins and reshaping the political structure of the galaxy completely. The Council's dream of a peaceful, unified galaxy under their benevolent guidance was dead, burned away in the fires of human warfare. "Admiral," his communications officer reported from the bridge, "we're receiving final surrender confirmations from the remaining Council fleets in Sectors 7 through 12. All hostile forces are withdrawing to their designated home systems." "As ordered." Paul nodded without taking his eyes off the alien ships limping away from human space. Many of those vessels bore scars from battles they had never expected to fight, damage from weapons they hadn't known existed, wounds inflicted by a species they had dismissed as primitive and manageable. The survivors would carry those scars home as permanent reminders of what happened when you gave humanity an ultimatum. The victory was complete and total, but the cost had been enormous on both sides. Entire star systems lay in ruins where the fighting had been fiercest. Ancient alien civilizations that had existed for thousands of years were reduced to radioactive debris orbiting dead stars. Billions of lives had been lost in a war that could have been avoided if the Galaxy Council had simply accepted that humanity would never willingly submit to alien authority on the colony world of New Boston. Colonel Susan Carter walked through the rebuilt city center where just months ago her people had fought house to house against Council invasion forces. The scars of battle were still visible in the architecture, but the human colonists had already begun the process of rebuilding and strengthening their defenses for whatever might come next. "Ma'am," her aide approached with a tablet containing the latest reports from across human space. Final casualty figures are coming in from all theaters. We lost approximately 2 million military personnel and 800,000 civilians during the 18 months of fighting. Susan took the tablet and studied the numbers that represented so much sacrifice and loss. Every name on those lists was someone who had chosen to fight and die rather than live under alien rule. They had paid the ultimate price to ensure that humanity would remain free to determine its own destiny among the stars. "And the Council losses?" she asked quietly. "Preliminary estimates suggest over 40 billion military and civilian casualties across all Council species." Her aide replied, "Most of their major industrial centers and military installations have been completely destroyed. It will take them decades to rebuild even basic infrastructure." The numbers were staggering, representing the complete collapse of a galactic civilization that had ruled the stars for over 1,000 years. But Susan felt no sympathy for their losses. The Galaxy Council had started this war with their ultimatum, believing they could force humanity into submission through superior numbers and technology. They had learned too late that humans measured victory not in ships destroyed or territory conquered, but in freedom preserved. Deep in the command bunkers beneath Washington, D.C., General Patricia Stone oversaw the final phase of Operation Endgame as human forces established permanent monitoring stations throughout former Council space. The galaxy would be watched carefully from now on, ensuring that no alliance of alien species could ever again threaten human independence. "All monitoring stations report operational," her chief of staff announced. "We now have real-time intelligence coverage of every major alien civilization in the galaxy. Any attempt to rebuild military forces beyond defensive levels will be detected immediately." Patricia nodded with satisfaction as she studied the strategic displays showing humanity's new position in galactic politics. The war had started with an alien ultimatum demanding human submission. It was ending with humanity as the undisputed dominant power in the galaxy, feared and respected by every surviving alien civilization. The irony was not lost on her. The Galaxy Council had sought to prevent war by imposing their version of peace on unwilling species. Instead, they had created the bloodiest conflict in galactic history by threatening the one species, willing to choose mutual annihilation over slavery. As the last reports of Council surrender filtered in from across the galaxy, Patricia reflected on what humanity had accomplished. They had rejected the false choice between peace and freedom, choosing instead to fight for the right to determine their own fate. The victory had come at an enormous cost, but it had ensured that future generations of humans would never again face the threat of alien domination. The age of the Galaxy Council was over. The age of human supremacy had begun, forged in the fires of total war and sealed with the blood of those who refused to surrender their freedom.